Jamie Lynn says as the years passed, she noticed Britney's behavior begin to change.
Words that you've used in the book to describe her behavior over your lifetime was erratic, paranoid, spiraling. How do you see your sister's state of mind currently?
I can't really speak to anyone else's state of mind. I don't think that's fair.
But she just did. What she says in the book about her sister's paranoia undermines what Britney Spears has been saying. That and the fact Britney has just gone through such an extreme situation that she's literally just broken free from after all of these years suggests that Jamie Lynn is so focused on herself that she's not even aware of how she's coming across and of how inappropriate this is. In the last video I put out, I said this: I'm going to be putting out another video as soon as I can, but definitely within this week, which wasn't ideal because I've now got COVID. So I'm not really in the best position to make a video, but I'm just so sick of them going out, you know, with weeks in between. I wanted to look at the interview that Jamie Lynn did recently because I think it shows her up as quite a narcissistic younger sister of Britney.
But I'm allowed to say how I felt in those because that matters. It matters that I was in pain.
No one can say, oh, it doesn't matter if you're in pain. So that puts us all in an impossible situation.
What was your reaction when the conservatorship was dissolved?
I was happy. First off, I don't understand. When it was put into place, I was 17-year-old. I was about to have a baby, so I didn't understand what was happening, nor was I focused on that. I was focused on the fact that I was a 17-year-old about to have a baby.
That sounds more like a rehearsed excuse, something that her friends would have enthusiastically gone along with. Because when you hear it, you think, oh, well, fair enough. Yeah, you had a lot on your plate. But in reality, being upset and worried for someone else doesn't just happen when we don't have our own worries and concerns to deal with. If she was genuinely very afraid for her sister, then her being a pregnant teenager wouldn't have made any difference to those feelings. So my sense is that she just wasn't very worried about Britney. And that she'd grown up maybe not having to really worry about her, playing the role of the younger sister who was taken care of.
She also describes the close bond she shared with her sister, who was 10 years older.
I felt like she was another mama.
Jamie Lynn was someone who could just focus on herself and not worry about her sister. So she seems preoccupied with making herself look good, and it's at a time when everyone else is focused on her sister. So it stands out to me as kind of weird. That feeling that something jars, something just doesn't feel right, you know, it doesn't feel appropriate. It comes from a place of not being able to empathize enough with others to see how they might be affected by you.
I understand just as little about it then as I do now.
But why does she understand so little now as an adult? Surely if she cared so much about her sister, she would want to understand what was going on. You know, she'd really want to get to the bottom of it and understand the details. So I think her saying she doesn't understand is a sign either that she's lying or that she's just not interested enough to have looked into those details for all of those years, despite her sister's suffering. But to be fair to Jamie Lynn, I think there's also a pressure when at least one parent is a narcissist that other people just blindly follow whatever they're told by that parent. You know, that person is always right and you shouldn't question them. So I imagine in Britney's family that that when she was in the conservatorship, the other siblings of Britney just went along with it, you know, that they didn't question their dad, and this can happen to the point where you don't even know, you're not even conscious that they're doing something terrible and you're just not pointing it out, you know, because you can be brainwashed to really believe that they know best. It suits a narcissist for nobody else to really understand what's going on and for them to just take their word for it, because that way they have full control. So they can often create that in the family, and it's all unconscious. You know, people just automatically go along with what the narcissist parent wants. They don't judge them. They agree that they must have got it right. They don't bother looking into these things themselves. And so that's how it feels similar to a cult, you know, that you have the cult leader that mustn't be questioned, that just knows everything. One of the tools they use to do this is triangulation. Jamie Spears has talked about how Jamie Lynn was naughty, she was a rebel, and it seems that she was treated differently, that even though she was the naughty one, Britney was the one who had a harder time, and that Jamie Lynn reminded Jamie Spears of himself. And so because of that, he seems to have favoured her. Being the favoured child means you're safe from most of the abuse. It also means there's a pressure on you to try to keep things that way, to try to make sure you don't become the one who's disapproved of, you don't get scapegoated, because the narcissist parent will always want to scapegoat somebody. So sticking with the status quo and not challenging that parent will keep you in that safe position. So I think that Jamie Lynn would have learned that what her father said always needed to be right. And now she's clearly questioning that, because in this book she's talking about how hard it was to have an alcoholic for a father and to have to deal with him lying about his drinking and so on. But even though she is standing up and questioning how he parented her now, I think that a lot of these unconscious lessons have been learnt, and that it's quite hard to unlearn them, and that she would have to be aware first that she's doing this stuff. So while it suited Jamie to have full control over his family and for no one to dispute his decisions, and him keeping his daughter in this crazy conservatorship that she didn't need to be in by all accounts, it would also have suited the family to have blindly gone along with everything.
There was a time where my sister asked me of her trust and will if I would be the person who assured that her boys got what they needed. Whether she's in a conservatorship or not, that was a very normal thing, I thought. Once I realized that, you know what, she's in a conservatorship, I felt like I just didn't want to be a part of until maybe she was out of the conservatorship. So
she's not making any sense. So it was a very normal thing for her to be in charge of who got her sister's money, whether she was in a conservatorship or not. It was very normal. But once she realised that Britney was in a conservatorship, she didn't want to be a part of it, even though it was really normal. And even though she knew her sister was in a conservatorship anyway. And she must assume that people are going to buy what she says, because she's not very worried about logic. That might be about a sense of entitlement. People are just going to lap up whatever she says.
There was no me overseeing funds or something like that. And if that was, it was a misunderstanding.
So what's she saying here then? Is she saying that she would have signed documents without knowing what was in them? Because that's quite a big deal if that is what she's saying. And really, what else could have happened? She would have had to have signed something to be put in that position. It seems like another way of just pleading ignorance. And, she's running out of excuses. You really do have a responsibility to understand something you're signing. Most people know that. So again, it seems like she's got a sense of entitlement because she thinks that she can just shirk that responsibility. That whether this is true or not, she can say, oh, well, I just didn't know, and people will think that that's okay. I would put money on her just at this point not being honest. Because why would the family have not told her what she was signing anyway, and why would Britney's team have lied about it?
But either way, I took no steps to be a part of it.
What does she mean, I took no steps to be a part of it? That sounds like a line that's been rehearsed again. Something that she could say that's officially correct and that she thinks sounds good and that maybe someone else has coached her on.
Jamie Lynn revealing for the first time she even tried to give Britney the resources she needed to end the conservatorship.
I've always been my sister's biggest supporter.
Again, if that's the case, then why release a book about how Britney was paranoid and off the rails just as her conservatorship is ending? It's obviously awful timing, in really bad taste, and it doesn't show any support for Britney, quite the opposite.
So when she needed help, I set up ways to do so, went out of my way to make sure that she had the contacts she needed to possibly go ahead and end this conservatorship and just end this all for our family. If it's going to cause this much discord, why continue it?
So she's saying she gave Britney a way to end the conservatorship. And she says two important things. One is that she went out of her way to do so. So she wants us to see her as a really kind person. Otherwise, why say it? The other thing she says is that if Britney had ended the conservatorship when she'd had the opportunity, then she could have ended this all for the sake of their family, since it was bringing discord. So Jamie Lynn is the thoughtful heroine, and Britney is keeping her family in a stressful situation and not doing right by them. It certainly doesn't go along with what Britney's been saying. According to her, she wasn't aware that she was even supposed to file an official document to get out of the conservatorship. That's why she kept asking in court if they would just set her free from it. It took a lot for her to have her own lawyer. She wasn't even allowed to do that before. So it seemed like actually everything was against her, and rather than recognising that, and really what a total nightmare this has been for Britney, Jamie Lynn has to suggest that she held the key and tried to help her sister to escape, but her sister just wasn't willing, and just how selfish that was of Britney to poor Jamie Lynn and her poor family. So it's very clear that Jamie Lynn is not on her sister's side. She's not standing there in support of her, and instead, repeatedly, she's trying to give her a bad name. She's trying to insult her and trying to make herself look good.
So you didn't always agree with the conservatorship?
It wasn't about agreeing with the conservatorship. Everyone has a voice and it should be heard. So if she wanted to talk to other people, then I did. I set that up. I even spoke to her legal team, previous legal team, and that did not end well in my favor. So I did take the steps to help, but how many times can I take the steps without, she has to walk through the door.
Walking through the door, I mean, how much easier can it be than that? So she's trying to make out that things were so easy for Britney, and yet she, Jamie Lynn, had gone to all this effort. She'd gone out of her way. It was such an effort. And yet, her sister's just obviously really lazy and just couldn't be bothered to leave the conservatorship. I hope that was helpful. And if you want, I can look at the rest of the interview. Let me know if you want me to do that. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll see you then. So most of this I'm not going to be visible for, apart from maybe, maybe there are going to be some odd things I can say that I'm not going to need to blow my nose to, in between saying. I can show you Britney and her sister instead, and I can just, and then I can just cut all those times where I'm blowing my nose and stuff. I'm not too bad, by the way. This is, I had the booster, so I haven't really had it too badly. I've just had, it just feels like a bad cold, really. Just to warn you, I am going to sound a bit like Marge Simpson throughout this video. I've been heavily reliant on my notes for this video because I think the COVID has got to my brain and I'm finding it hard to think clearly. I have discovered that regular Lemsips do not have a decongestant. I have discovered that regular Netflix do not have a decongestant in them. But then when researching it, I discovered that actually it's not very good to have a decongestant, even though you might really, really want one. Her choice of words is interesting. Walking through the door, I mean, how much easier... There we go. Should we cut that there then? Let's cut that there. So I think, you know, there's a lot more to this interview, and I haven't tried to squeeze that into this video because this is probably the most I can do. You know, I don't want to promise too much, but I also really am keen to get this channel back to what it was again. Please subscribe, and I'll see you then.
There we go. That was the end, wasn't it? Oh, little bear. You little bear cub. You funny thing.